Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parirajagacharya Asta Sutta Sriman His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta, Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parirajagacharya, Asta Sutta Sriman, His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Dham Ki. All glories to the assembly of devotees. All glories to the assembly of devotees. All glories to the assembly of devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya Naran Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasan Tato Jai Mudiraye Naistu Padresu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 7th Chapter, text number 6. Maitreya Uvacha Tatad Sarvani Bhutani Shrutva Midusatamo Paritus tatamanis bis tata sadhusva iti anarth bhuvan. Maitreya uvacha tatad sarvani bhutani Shrutva midushtata moditam Paritustata manis bistata Sadhustva iti anath bruvan. Maitreya uvacha Tatad sarvani bhutani Shrutva midustata modidam Paristustata manis bistata Sadhustva iti anarth bruvan. Dani. Dasvarnani bhutani Rudva midustamoditam Nuspatamabhistata Sadhu svadu iti apabhuvan. Maitreya, the sage Maitreya, Uvacha said, Tata, at that time, Sarvani, all, Bhutani, personalities. Shrutva, after hearing. Midutama, the best of the benedictors, Lord Shiva. Uditam, spoken by. Paritusta, being satisfied. Atmavi, by heart and soul. Tata, my dear Vidura. Sadhu, sadhu, well done, well done. Iti, thus. Artha abruvan, as we have said. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. The great sage Maitreya said, my dear Vidura, all the personalities present were very much satisfied in heart and soul upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the benedictors. Purport. In this verse, Lord Shiva is described as Midustatam, the best of the benedictors. He is also known as Ashutosa, which indicates that he is very quickly satisfied and very quickly angered. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that less intelligent persons go to the demigods for material benedictions. In this connection, people generally go to Lord Shiva because he is always quickly satisfied and gives benediction to his devotees without consideration. He is called Midustatam, or the best of benedictors. Materialistic persons are always anxious to get material profit, but they are not serious about spiritual profit. Sometimes, of course, it so happens that Lord Shiva becomes the best benedictor in spiritual life. It is said that once a poor Brahmana worshipped Lord Shiva for a benediction, and Lord Shiva advised the devotee to go see Sanatana Goswami. The devotee went to Sanatana Goswami and informed him that Lord Shiva had advised him to seek out the best benediction from him, Sanatana. Sanatana had a touchstone with him, which he kept with the garbage. On the request of the poor Brahmana, Sanatana Goswami gave him the touchstone, and the Brahmana was very happy to have it. He now could get as much gold as he desired simply by touching this touchstone to iron. But after he left Sanatana, he thought, if a touchstone is the best benediction, why has Sanatana Goswami kept it with the garbage? He therefore returned and asked Sanatana, Sir, if this is the best benediction, why did you keep it with the garbage? Sanatana Goswami then informed him, actually, this is not the best benediction, but are you prepared to take the best benediction from me? The Brahmana said, yes, sir. Lord Shiva has sent me to you for the best benediction. Then Sanatana Goswami asked him to go throw the touchstone in the water nearby and then come back. The poor Brahmana did so, and when he returned, Sanatana Goswami initiated him with the Hare Krishna mantra. Thus, by the benediction of Lord Shiva, the Brahmana got the association of the best devotee of Lord Krishna, and was thus initiated in the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timananyasya Gananjana Shalakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaya Rupa Gadatmayam Padanti Swapadantikam. Thank you everyone for being here. I seek the blessings of all devotees present and my senior devotees who are much more learned in the Shastra than I am. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the sky is unlimited, but a bird can only fly as high as his ability. So I'm going to fly as high as I can, even though the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is an unlimited topic. So this idea of benedictions, in the Bhagavad Gita it says that less intelligent men approach the demigods for material benedictions. And, this isn't necessary. Krishna says they're less intelligent. They're less intelligent because a material benediction is relative to this material world. It's totally dependent on your karma, and it's totally dependent on the arrangement of the material energy for it to come into place. There's this story that Gauranga Prema Prabhu told me once about a farmer in China. And the farmer, he had a neighbor farmer as well. And the neighbor farmer, one day the farmer found a horse. And when he found the horse, his neighbor farmer said, "Oh wow, what good fortune! You found the horse." And the farmer that found the horse, he's kind of wise. He kind of understood the material energy, and he said, "Yeah, it's nice, yeah." And the next couple of weeks, that horse ran away, and the farmer's neighbor was like, "Oh, such bad fortune! Your blessing has turned into a burden." And then a week later, the horse came back with a female horse, and the neighbor said, "Oh, what great fortune you have! You have 2 horses." And he said, "Yeah, things can always change." And then the next week, his son was riding the horse, the female horse, bucked him off, broke his leg. The neighbor said, "Oh, such bad fortune." And then a week later, the Chinese government came to the village and said, "The country is about to go to war. We're recruiting all the sons to go to war." But he had a broken leg, so he couldn't go to war. So the story goes on like that. A blessing turns into a burden. And so everyone in this material world is seeking a benediction in order to adjust their material situation to have satisfaction. But generally, this endeavor to try to adjust the material situation actually becomes a burden on the person to be able to have that temporary illusion of comfort. For instance, so many people in America, they'll buy really nice homes, but they have to drive to work, get stuck in traffic. No one likes to be stuck in traffic. There's a risk of getting in a car accident. They have to go to a job where they probably don't like working for the boss, but they have to work for him anyways. And then they come home and they get a little fragment of happiness through the possible sex life that they could have at home. And so basically this whole struggle for existence and this fierce competition for limited resources is happening on the pretext of sex desire. Everyone is acting according to this idea that if I work hard and I develop a nice material situation for myself, I can enjoy sex life. And so we're actually in a desert of material unhappiness, however. And this material sense gratification is like a drop of water in that desert. This example is given quite frequently. If you're in a desert and you're walking through the desert, all you want is water. And if someone gives you a little tiny drop of water, that's not even really a blessing, that's just a burden. It's like, okay, I got a drop of water, but now I'm just even more thirsty than I was before because now I got a little taste, but now I want even more. So that's what the material world is like. It's like Prabhupada says, it's like an itch. You keep itching at it, and at first it feels good, and then you itch at it again, and it still feels good, and then you keep itching at it, and then blood. That's what he says. And so the material world is like an itch, and the more and more we scratch at it, and the more and more we actually agitate our disease. And so in order for the materialists to maintain this illusion of so-called material comfort, they have to approach demigods, or nowadays like politicians, or minute controllers that have power and they're able to benedict these certain individuals with enough material facilities to maintain their illusion so they can continue on with their illusion. But the Bhagavatam is actually, in the Vedic literatures in general, they're actually directing us not to do this, not to become bewildered by this so-called endeavor for happiness. The Bhagavatam is asking us to go for a greater wealth, go for gold, you can say. And that's the wealth of pure devotion. Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he explains what pure devotion is. Anya bilasyata sunyam jnana karmani anavritam anukalena krishna shilam bhaktir uttamam. So basically, pure devotion is free from the desire for our own wants, our own desire, our own satisfaction. Sex life in the material world is actually a perverted reflection, and this is explained in the beginning of the Bhagavatam by Prabhupada, of the Adi Ras, the original exchange of love that takes place in the spiritual world. So when we're forgetful of Krishna, naturally we're going to seek out that relationship of love and an exchange of some type of feelings between one individual and another. But it's not necessarily happening for a selfless reason. It's happening for a selfish reason. And pure devotion is free from any desire for our own personal gratification. The devotee isn't so much concerned with adjusting the material situation because he sees that everywhere in creation all the living entities are being maintained nicely. The birds are waking up in the morning, there's worms waiting for them. Even the worms, there's plenty of stool on the ground for them. So there's so many opportunities for us to be maintained in this material world and to simply waste our life trying to adjust the material elements in such a way that our body can be comfortable isn't actual wealth. It's actually a poverty for who the soul is. And so the wealth of the devotee isn't dependent on any external adjustment. It's solely dependent on an internal adjustment to awaken pure devotion within their heart. So like I was saying, material wealth is limited is limited, and it's based on so many other dependent factors. It's dependent on my karma, and it's dependent on my destiny. In the Bhagavatam it says that our happiness and our distress materially, it's already predetermined. And so the devotee being guided by the Shastra Chakshu, they see through the Shastras, they understand this, and they're making endeavor to not become dependent on a material adjustment, but rather they become dependent on Krishna. And so that's what the wealth of devotional service is that our wealth is that we're trying to become dependent on Krishna. We're trying to become fully aware that everything in this material world is being provided for by Krishna. And my own endeavor isn't actually going to make the situation any more peaceful, and it's not going to make the situation any more miserable. Things are just going to go according to the flow of what Krishna wants. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, there's that shloka, Prakriti kriyamani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vidur atman kartaham iti manyate. And so the translation for that is, the soul bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried about by the three modes of material nature. So the materialist thinks that through their endeavor, they're actually the doer of their activities. The house that they've received, the car that they drive, is all because of their own activity. But it's not. It's only the adjustment of the material energy, and it's only through the mercy of Krishna that they're being provided with that. And so the devotee, they see that everything is actually Krishna's energy. It's Krishna's property. So they're constantly thinking of, how do I engage this energy in Krishna's service, rather than how do I exploit this energy for my own gratification. This is mentioned in Nectar of Instruction, Nirbandha Sri Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchite, which is basically just understanding that in relation to this, in the same purport, Prabhupada says that enthusiasm is endeavoring with intelligence. So intelligence means to know how to use everything in Krishna's service. And in order to know how to use everything in Krishna's service, we have to be dependent on Krishna 100%. We have to be fully surrendered to Krishna 100%. And when we have faith that Krishna is going to take care of us, that Krishna is going to provide what I need in order for me to carry out my devotional service properly, then an overwhelming peace comes upon us. But that peace materially isn't just enough. We need something higher than that, not just a peaceful material situation. We need satisfaction within that isn't dependent on a material situation. A story of this dependence on Krishna is exemplified by Gaura Govinda Maharaj. Gaura Govinda Maharaj one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to devotional service and practicing Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada actually sent him to Bhumeshwar because Prabhupada was very disgusted with the Jagannath Puri temple, that they weren't letting his disciples in the temple. So he sent Gaur Govinda Maharaj to establish a temple there. And Gaur Govinda Maharaj went there with nothing. He got there, he had nothing. Someone donated him some land, but it was like jungle. And all that was there was tigers and snakes, bugs, mosquitoes, and it was just not a very good, materially wasn't a very good situation. So he couldn't actually stay on the land for the first couple, I think for like the first year or so. He wasn't able to stay on the actual property itself that the land was donated to. So he was actually staying with Indian road workers during this time, waiting for Krishna's arrangement to take place. And so one of his godbrothers went to go visit him. And Indian road workers aren't necessarily the most sattvic people, according to Madhava Ananda. I mean, even in America, we see like American construction workers are like, you know, hollering at Matajis and eating meat on the beams and you know, cussing. So it's kind of like a tamasic environment. So this is where Gaur Govinda Maharaj was staying. He was staying with Indian road workers in the tents that they have on the side of the road. And his godbrother came and asked him, you know, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, why are you staying in conditions like this? Why not try to find a different situation? And he said, this is actually all the mercy of my Guru Maharaj. So he could see, I mean, he was so dependent on Srila Prabhupada, so dependent on Krishna, that he understood that this arrangement was actually carried out by Krishna. And when Srila Prabhupada came to visit him in Bhumeshwar, at that time he was actually able to like construct like a bhajan kuti, or similar to the one that they have in Mayapur, you know, mud hut. And he actually arranged for Prabhupada to stay in the government like room. That was going to be a lot more materially comfortable, but there was this building that Gaur Govinda Maharaj constructed, and when Prabhupada went to go visit, he stayed in that mud hut. And Gaur Govinda Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, what should we do with this land? Should we build from here, or should we go and seek out a different piece of property? And Srila Prabhupada said, no, build on this piece of property. One day this will be the center of the city. So Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he had faith in that instruction. At that time it would be difficult to see how that was going to take place, considering the spot that they had was in the middle of the jungle. It's going to be the middle of the city. It's unfathomable, it's inconceivable. But because he had faith in this instruction of his spiritual master, he developed. He ended up building the Bhumeshwar temple. And now, I haven't been to Bhumeshwar, but I know devotees from Bhumeshwar, and I talked to them about this story. And they say, yes, that's actually the case. The Bhumeshwar temple is actually in the center of the city in Bhumeshwar. So, you can see that when this dependence on Krishna and the dependence on Guru is so strong, it can actually carry us across the ocean of material suffering. And regardless of our material situation, if we maintain faith that Krishna has a plan, then things are going to work themselves out. And so this is the wealth of a devotee, the ability to depend on Krishna. And so how does one acquire this wealth? How does one acquire the faith to be dependent on Krishna? Srila Prabhupada explains that, or Ramananda Roy rather, in his conversations with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they finally get to the point of discussing the highest topic of pure devotion. And Ramananda Roy says that the only qualification for pure bhakti is an intense desire to have it, lalyum, greed. So we have to be greedy for this faith in devotional service. We have to be greedy for this dependence on Krishna. We have to be greedy to taste pure love of Godhead. And just like someone, if they want to be successful materially, they have to be greedy for it. Similarly, we have to be greedy for our spiritual wealth. We can't just think that it's going to come overnight, and then one day we'll just be pure devotees. We have to endeavor for it, and we have to be constantly praying to Krishna, please give me a drop of sincerity. Please give me a drop of humility. Please give me a drop of all the qualities that I need in order to love you properly. Because through my own endeavor, I'm not going to be able to do it. Only through your mercy, only through the mercy of the Vaishnavas, and only through the mercy of Guru am I going to be able to attain this. So please help me, Krishna. Kindly help me. And we see this throughout all these great personalities in our lineage. We see it in Srila Prabhupada. We see it in Gaur Govinda Maharaj. We see these devotees who are so dependent on Krishna, and regardless of the material external circumstance that they have, that dependence on Krishna is so strong that it carries them through, and ultimately Krishna makes an arrangement where their endeavor becomes successful. And so, if we want to be wealthy in our Krishna consciousness, we have to learn how to cry out for Krishna, and we have to pray to Krishna, Krishna, help me cry for you. If we can't cry for Krishna now, we should at least be crying to cry for Krishna one day. And when we're able to do that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's releasing this storehouse of love of God. And when we're able to do that, call out to Krishna with sincerity, without duplicity, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give us that treasure of love of Godhead. Gaur Govinda Maharaj explains that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is patita pavana. He's not kapita pavana. Kapita means duplicious. And so patita pavana means realizing that I am fallen. I am a wrench. I am full of so many unwanted qualities. But being honest with that and calling out for Krishna in that mood of being aware of the disqualifications that I have, that's our qualification to obtain pure love of God. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give us his blessing. We'll taste the fruit of love of God, and we'll be able to distribute that love of Krishna to the world. I think that's all I have to say. If there's any questions or even better reflections, and then also constructive criticism.
I have a question. So, Lord Chaitanya is considered the deliverer of the most fallen. Right?
Yeah.
You were just saying that one's qualification to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya is admitting one's own, shortcomings and begging out for mercy. But that in itself, it's pretty exalted. You're like admitting your own fault and you're crying out for mercy. But even more fallen than that is if you don't admit your fault and you're proud and you don't call out for mercy. But we can see those people aren't being delivered. That's even more fallen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How do you understand that?
I can repeat. He said that to admit our faults and see our disqualification and call out for Krishna is a pretty low position, but even lower than that is our disqualification. Is those who are prideful and they don't call out for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
They don't admit that they're fallen.
They don't admit they're fallen. Yeah, well, like I was saying, you have to admit that you're fallen, because like he said, he's patita pavana. He's not going to deliver someone who's duplicitous.
Sorry.
Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Yeah, like I was saying at the end of the class, those people who are in that fallen position, they're duplicitous. They don't think they have a problem. You have to admit that I am fallen. That's how you get Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Although they are more fallen, they're still duplicitous. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu won't give mercy to someone who's has a complex heart. You have to be simple-hearted and be free from a duplicitous mentality. And that freedom from duplicity and that humility to call out for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is our qualification. I mean, look at Jagai and Madai. They were fallen, But they didn't get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu until they admitted they're fallen. And then they approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said, sin no more, and you have my blessings. So in the incident in Jagai and Madai, they were fallen from the very beginning. Nityananda Prabhu was working like anything to give him the mercy. He even ran away from him with Haridas Thakur. It's a really sweet pastime. But they weren't able to get the mercy until they admitted that they were fallen, that we made a mistake, that we are wrenches. And after they did that, after they took the humble position, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave them the mercy, brought them in the assembly of devotees, and all the Vaishnavas gave them mercy. So we have to be free from duplicity. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. Ribo.
So you're talking about surrendering or depending on the mercy of Krishna. You were talking about depending on the mercy of Krishna. And last night I was reading the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj in the Vishnu Purana, and I was very inspired by it because that entire pastime was about exactly what you're talking about. In particular, I pulled out a quote, and I put it on Facebook, and I'd like to read it. The deadly poison administered by his father's officers he partook of unhesitatingly, and without its working any visible change. This is translated in 1840, by the way, but the wording is very beautiful, if you can understand it. For he looked upon the world with mind undisturbed and full of benignity, regarded all things with equal affection, and as identical with himself. He was righteous in an inexhaustible mine of purity and truth, and an unfailing model for all pious men. In this particular version of the pastime in the Vishnu Purana, he also, when his father attempted to kill him, he basically told his father, you're not going to be able to kill me because I'm meditating on Vishnu. He explained it straight up to his father, which is very interesting. That's not described in the Bhagavatam. But yeah, very cool.
Jai, thank you. Balaram?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that point you were talking about, that you were mentioning about, people being fallen, and if they're extremely fallen, then why can't they get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And I was thinking there's that verse in the Bhagavad Gita, I forgot what, I think it's chapter 2 or 3, but Bhogeshvara Prasaktanam Tayapartha Chetasam, that those who are too bewildered by material opulence, they can't, the resolute determination for devotional service doesn't take place. And then like Queen Kunti, she has in the Bhagavatam, the prayers of Queen Kunti, she says, Janmasvaya Shuddhashibir, those who are too intoxicated by wealth and education and beauty and all that, they can't call out feelingly, So people, people are, you could say, barring themselves from getting Krishna's mercy. They're putting up a big bar there from getting Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy is flowing, but they're just putting that up there. Now, of course, those people, they need to get that, that pride. It has to be broken down, And over time, just living in the material world, it will break it down. May not take this life, maybe take a few lives, but their pride gets, smashed just by the nature of this world. But also devotees, devotees who are empowered to preach, preachers, empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, empowered by the Acharyas, which anybody could be actually empowered. They also have the ability to, you could say, change people, melt people's hearts, change people like that. So that's also there, that people may be really fallen, which is true, and they may be super proud, but Prabhupada and Prabhupada's followers, his disciples and grand disciples like that, it's their business to purify their hearts to such a high degree that they could even melt the hearts of, the most proud. So that, and then in this way they could, take to Krishna consciousness. So, but it is challenging for people like that.
Yeah, in a conversation with Lieutenant Mosey in Chicago. You know that conversation? It's in Science of Self-Realization. It's actually a really amazing conversation. Prabhupada talks about how Harinam and Prasadam distribution can actually stop crime in the world. And give us a building, yeah. Yeah. But Lieutenant Mosey asked this question, those who are materially successful, is it difficult for them to be God conscious? And Prabhupada said yes, and he gave that shloka. And then in regards to the devotee pulling that desire out, the Bhogeshwar, yeah. That in regards to the pure devotee pulling that desire for pure devotion out of us, I mean, that's the mercy of the devotee. I was thinking about either talking about this topic, the name of what I named it was material wealth versus spiritual wealth. And then the other idea I was going to have is like the merciful vibrations that a devotee speaks. And so in regards to, the devotee is more merciful than Krishna actually. And Prabhupada says that on many occasions. I mean, I was just reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kala Krishnadas. Remember, he got harassed by the Bhattacharys. And for those who don't know, Kala Krishnadas was a servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he went to South India. And when he was in South India, he met like a gang of gypsies. Or he didn't meet them, but there was a gang of gypsies around. And Kala Krishnadas was his servant, and he became attracted by this gang of gypsies. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got to Jagannath Puri, he like banished Kala Krishnadas from his association. But specifically women gypsies. And so, it goes on to explain, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, it goes on to explain that although he was banished from the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, and the association of devotees, like Kala Krishnadas was crying. He felt so bad. So Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Prabhu actually engaged them in service. He sent them to Navadvip to tell Mother Sachi and all the Navadvip devotees about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returning to Jagannath Puri. So the potency of the devotees is so powerful because the devotees pull that want for pure devotion out of our heart. I mean, there's a story in Prabhupada Memories, Atanga Shakti Mataji, I think. It's Hriday Nanda Goswami's former wife before he took sannyas. When he took sannyas, this is a really amazing story. When he took sannyas, they were actually married at the time, and they went up together to talk to Prabhupada about him taking sannyas. And they saw it as like an offering to Prabhupada, like offering themselves to Prabhupada in that way. And Hriday Nanda Goswami was going to take sannyas, and so Srila Prabhupada, Hriday Nanda Goswami asked him, well, can I take sannyas? And he said, well, what does your wife think? And this happened like 3 times, and he kind of like brushed it off 3 times in a row. And then he finally said, well, what does your wife think? And then he said, and then she's like, yes, Prabhupada, we want to do that. And he said, you have a very good wife. And then he went up to her after like face to face, and he said, what do you want? And she explains that in that moment, she had all these floods of material, of all her desires that she's ever had, and desires that she hasn't even thought about before, came flooding into her mind. And she said, all of a sudden, she just had this feeling. She said, I want to be Krishna conscious. And it just like was pulled out of her, she explains. She didn't even like know what she was saying, and all of a sudden she said that. And Prabhupada says, you already are Krishna conscious. And so she goes on to explain that this is what Prabhupada is doing for us. Prabhupada is pulling this want for Krishna, to be Krishna conscious out of us. I mean, I know from my own background, I don't know about how many people here, but I know from my own background, like 10 years ago, the last thing I would think about doing is trying to become God conscious. But because of Prabhupada's books, because of the association of devotees, that desire is gradually being pulled out of me to want to be Krishna conscious. So the devotee is so powerful in that regard that through his merciful vibrations that he's speaking, it pulls that desire out of the hearts of those who would have otherwise not been interested in becoming God conscious or even seeking love of God. So, any other questions, comments? Yes.
You mentioned point of dependence, so I was remembering how Srila Prabhupada, he was, he's so exalted position, but still he was always taking the humble position and saying that everything that is happening, the credit actually goes to my spiritual master. Mm-hmm. And he even mentioned to his disciples that actually it's my spiritual master who is sending all these people to help me in this service. So he's like always depending on his guru, and you can see how much service he could do. So
yeah. Anything else? Damodar Kumar or Nanda Kirtan Prabhu?
About Prabhupada saying that this bhakti yoga can stop crime.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell that pastime with the Arabic man the other day.
This was at Palmore College, right? Yeah. So no, he's an instructor. We were distributing books at Palmore College, and Ananda Kirtan was talking to an Arabic man, explaining the Arabic books, and the Arabic man, he spoke a little bit of broken English, so Ananda Kirtan was speaking to him in broken English, and the man asked, "Can this stop crime?" And then Ananda Kirtan goes, "Oh yes, it can stop crime. I was once a criminal, but now no more. Now I just want to do good for people." And the man was impressed. Did he leave a donation?
Yeah, I think a little donation, and took the Gita and all this.
Yeah, and then he took the Gita and all the small books. So.
Yeah, he's a teacher.
Yeah, he's a teacher. It's a nice question, it's a valid question because. Yeah.
Wants to do good for the world.
Yeah. And Damodar Kumar, anything? Jamal? Any reflections? Janardana?
thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarambhascha kripa sindhu devacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.